Hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on your time zone. Welcome to my channel. My name is Ogbanje Joseph. Please subscribe to this channel, share, like, as well as drop a comment on the comment section. Our lecture today is titled Problems and Challenges or Prospects and Challenges of Africa's Development Initiatives and Leadership Deficit. Prospects and Challenges of Africa's Development Initiatives and Leadership Deficit. Now, development in Africa is a very emotional issue that has defiled various initiatives by African leaders. The dream of African leaders like Nnamdi Azikiwe of Nigeria, Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, Julius Nyerere of Tanzania, Jomo Kenyatta of Kenya, Kenneth Kaunda of Zambia, etc., who kept roaring in 1960s when many of the African countries got her independence, was for Africa to become like London, Paris, or New York. They all joined hands together to form the Organization of African Unity, OAU, in 1963. But not long after the OAU was formed, division crept in along the lines of former colonial masters. Three groups appeared, which are the Casablanca group, the Monrovia group, and the Brazzaville group, which caused a major crack to the unity and progress of Africa. At independence, the various African leaders adopted different initiatives, to ensure that they bring about development. While some adopted socialism, others adopted capitalism. The example of African socialism by Tanzania, tagged Ujamaism, Guinea's communitarianism, Libya's welfarism, Ghana's democratic centralism under Nkrumahism, Nigeria's democratic welfarism, etc., are all examples of the initiatives that were actually adopted in Africa, at the beginning of independence in 1960s. At independence, there has been initiatives like the various development plans adopted, adoption of democratic culture, the various African socialisms as domesticated by various countries, the formation of regional bodies like ECOWAS, SADC, ECA, and so on. All these initiatives have not been able to translate to the development of the African societies. Now, what are the prospects? What are the problems that actually made Africa not to achieve the needed development that could have brought about the development of the African society? The first problem is the problem of pervasive poverty in the land. Now, one of the major challenges of development in Africa is poverty. Now, we have mental poverty, we have physical poverty, and there are so many types of poverty that actually bedeviled against the development, of the African society. The leaders, instead of developing their minds to actually grow beyond the poverty situation we find ourselves in Africa, they have remained where they were since 1960. In fact, what we have found out in Africa is a retrogression, to pervasive poverty. So that is one of the challenges of development initiatives in Africa. Number two is economic underdevelopment. Underdevelopment is actually found everywhere in the African societies, and so because of that, it has inhibited the development initiatives that several African countries have actually adopted. Number three is political instability and internal crisis. In several African countries, of course, there have been crises of various kinds, and then there is political instability. Today, you have lack of continuity of policies and programs of successive governments. So you see one government comes to power, and then the next government comes to power and jettison all the policies and programs of the former administration. All of these instabilities have actually, led to the killing of development initiatives in Africa. Number four is corruption. Corruption is a cankerworm that has eaten deep into the very fabric of the African society. Now, we have political corruption, bureaucratic corruption, academic corruption, and of course, all types of corruption, economic corruption, and all types of corruption. All of these have actually inhibited development initiatives in the African society. Then number five is dependency syndrome. A lot of African leaders are actually dependent on their former colonial masters, for development purposes, for development initiatives. Now, but of course, all of these things, these development plans or development initiatives that actually come from the West is not just for the giving. Of course, it comes with certain prices that have to be paid by the African countries. Okay. Number six is domination from outside. Domination from outside. Of course, the African countries actually own their resources, own their economies, but they don't control these economies. There is a difference between ownership and control. Who controls the economy, actually has upper hand than who owns the economy. Now, the economy is owned by the African societies, but it is controlled from outside. Now, the last one is imperialism, both political imperialism, cultural imperialism, social imperialism. All of these things actually, are one of the major reasons why some of these initiatives have not been, have not seen the light of the day. Then the last one is neocolonialism. Neocolonialism is a new form of colonialism whereby the African countries, although have achieved their political independence, but of course, economically, they are still tied to the apron strings of the Western world. So to that extent, the various development initiatives that are supposed to have, orchestrated development in African societies have actually not translated to that. Okay, so those are the problems. Those are the problems of development initiatives within the African societies. Now, let us look at the prospects. What are the prospects? Number one prospect is from the formation of regional bodies. Now, they're coming into existence, ECOWAS, SADC, ECA, and several other regional bodies within the African sub-region or within the African continent has actually helped Africa, it has put Africa on the pedestal of development. So to that extent, we can say that there is actually prospects, for Africa's development. Okay, so that's number one. Then number two, globalization. Now, because of globalization, several African countries cannot just sit down and begin to just underdevelop their societies and not do anything. Okay, because globalization is actually a process in which the world is now knit together, and then there is the use of information and communication technology. All of that actually is used to checkmate the African leaders. Okay, and so because development are actually found particularly in the Western world, it is now very easy for the African societies to actually buy into the development trajectories of the Western world through globalization. Number three, the adoption of democratic rule in Africa. Democracy is one of the things that can actually jumpstart or act as a springboard, for development in the African society. With development, series of initiatives can actually come, into play, and they help the Africa to actually achieve development. Okay. Then the next one, number four is Africa's integration. Africa's integration. Now, with the integration of the African continent, a whole lot of the African countries are beginning to buy into centrally planned economic economic initiatives, okay, within the African sub-region, within the African continent. So to that extent, there is actually hope, there is prospect. Then the last one is Africa's peer review mechanism. Africa's peer review mechanism, and of course, new partnership for Africa's development. That is NEPAD. NEPAD is one point. Then Africa's peer review mechanism is another point. All of these have actually helped the African society, to achieve development. Thank you very much.